Michael Kassler, Chair of the Commission.
Kiana Williams, Commissioner.
Fred Rancier, Commissioner.
Keisha Hunley Jenkins, Commissioner. Darlene Wells, the Auditor's Office. Sarah Ingalls, Commissioner.
Okay, thank you. Have you had a chance to review the meeting minutes? I'd like to add one thing. I've noticed that all of our meeting minutes don't include you as an attendee. And I would just like the record to reflect that our able staff person from the Legislative Research Office has been in attendance in all of these meetings. Are there other changes, corrections, additions to the meeting minutes? Okay, if not, could I have a motion to second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Okay. Greg, you have some new information for us, correct?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, go ahead.
There were a couple of requests at last week's meeting. One was to work with Deputy City Auditor Wilds and provide the auditor data that was presented last week, as well as providing information on the percentage increase to the median for each elected official. Since then, there have also been a couple of other requests, and if it's okay with the commission, I will get to that as we go through the slides. So what you have here is kind of the same format here.
What am I looking for?
Oh, it's this one right here. The
The packet,
What date?
the staple, the slides for tonight. The thick packet.
I think it's the
Landscape.
one on the top there,
Right here?
right
Yes.
there. If that's dated
says
April
March 2nd.
6th, okay.
It should say April
Here's one.
6th.
I was given this, but I am.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, go ahead.
You have it? Okay. Okay, so on the first slide, that's table 1, what we have here is the research that we performed in terms of per capita salary. And just for example, if we began there on the left-hand side, because the mayor is the first one listed, the blue bar represents the elected official salary per capita, so that takes into account population. The orange bar represents the median elected official salary. In other words, the cities that the commission studied, that is the market rate. The request was if I could provide the difference between the elected officials' per capita salary and the market rate or median per capita salary. And I realize it's small there, but if you look right there kind of in the middle of those two bars, there's a dot with 14% on it. And just so we're clear, the scale on the far right side show the percentages. The scale on the far left side shows the per capita salary. So what we see there with the mayor's salary is that there's a 14% difference between the mayor's salary and the market rate. Council president at 10 cents and the market rate 14 cents. You can see that percentage up higher toward the top of the graph. That is a 40% difference. Council member, 8 cents for Columbus council members, 9 cents for the market. That's a 13% difference. City attorney, 22 cents and 28 cents for the market rate. That's 27% difference. And for the auditor, that was the only one that was the opposite direction. It's actually a -5% there, the auditor being at 22 cents and the market rate being at 21 cents per capita.
I just wanted to say this was exactly what I wanted, so I just really appreciate the time and effort that was put into this, because I think that, again, it gives us something to anchor to and is very straightforward. So just really appreciate the effort that went into that.
Thank you. And we'll see this slide again slightly modified in a few pages here. So if there are no questions on that, we'll move to the next slide. Another request, pardon me, was taking that information that we had from the first slide and applying that percentage difference to the current salaries. And what you see there on the right-hand side is essentially the current salary. So again, taking the mayor, just because it's the first one listed there, taking the current salary and adding 14% to it. And that's what we see there on the right side in the orange.
Just one further point of clarification.
Yes, sir.
That would be, based upon the data we are analyzing, that would, if we had been at median for these positions, that would be the salary today. If we were at median, as opposed to,
If we were at per
Rolling
capita median,
I'm sorry?
if we were at per capita median.
As opposed to what would that number look like rolled out over whatever?
Right, and actually, I think I can help answer that question.
Because there is salary movement over the next 3 or
Exactly.
4 years.
Yes, Commissioner.
Yes, yeah.
Commissioner Hunley Jenkins had another request that we'll cover in a few slides that I think might help
Okay.
with your question. Okay, on the next slide, Table 3, this is, the next two slides refer to the auditor. And the reason for that is because, again, that was answering that request to put together the data that the commission reviewed last week regarding the additional auditor research. So what we see here is basically a recalculation from what the survey told us. This is a recalculation based on the research provided by the auditor's office. And you can see that our auditor, there, the orange bar, same salary we've been discussing the whole time, $200,339. The median salary is $174,440. When it's calculated on the next slide, Table 4, when it's calculated per capita, it actually decreases the Columbus City auditor's per capita salary by a penny below the median per capita salary.
So Greg, before we go into what that calculates to, so a couple questions about this.
Okay.
So did you validate the data that was received from the auditor's office?
I did not.
Okay. And so when the auditor's office provided the information, in part, it was because there's a sense that what we originally saw didn't fully encapsulate what our auditor does. Is that correct?
Well, I think Deputy City Auditor Wilds can speak more to that, but I can say, let me follow up with my first answer first. The data sources that were used in that research were directly to the cities. It was the annual, it's been changed around, annual comprehensive financial report for each of the cities, so it's publicly available information. When that's the case, I don't necessarily feel a need to verify that information because of its availability. I also want to throw out there that there were, I think, 2 cities, maybe 3, that it was difficult to get information from, and there was at least one where I got the information myself, and I'll remember it here in a little bit, I think, where I contacted my colleague, and I was provided that information for that equivalent position. It was Lexington.
Well, and part of the reason why I'm asking about did you validate it, because I certainly don't, believe Deputy Wilds would do anything.
Nor do I.
Untoward. But the reason why I was asking about the validation is because, like, we didn't ask the attorney's office to provide their own data. We didn't ask the mayor's office to provide their own data, right? So some of this is about having a third-party objective source validating the data versus receiving information from an individual department that says to us, yes, we're out of skew. And so that's why, to me, again, to keep everything consistent, we would want that third-party review the same way you've reviewed the other ones and provided us that information.
I understand completely, Commissioner. I will also say that the information that was provided to the commission by the auditor's office had detailed information in that table, if I remember correctly, in terms of comparing and contrasting duties for the Columbus auditor and those of the other cities. So it is information that's right there, but I do understand your
Wonderful.
statement.
And then, Deputy Wilds, it does bring me another question. So in the last meeting, we did talk about the duties that you had outlined, but then in the previous meeting, a number of the things that you said that the auditor does, somebody else said that the finance director does. And so I'm still not clear on who's the arbiter of who's doing what. How do we know the difference when somebody says it's finance who's doing it and we're hearing that, no, the auditor's office is doing it?
Well, I don't think there's any difference in, I don't think there's any disparity in what the finance director does here versus what the auditor does here. It's when you look at other cities, and the finance director in some of those other cities will do all of the debt stuff, for example. They might do all the treasury investment stuff, which, our auditor does here. So I really didn't find a city that is on our survey list where it's exactly the same.
Okay.
There's differences in every single one of those cities. There was not one that, had the same responsibilities that our auditor has here.
Gotcha, okay. Just for me, it just makes it hard to do that apples-to-apples comparison the same way that we can do in the other positions.
No, I agree, because, that, you can make that same argument for the mayor as well. I mean, the mayor in one city might do something, different in another city. So, yeah, it just, there is a lot of disparities, it seems, though, in the auditor's position.
Okay,
And,
thank you.
and Commissioner, I'll just throw back out there, too, because I think we briefly discussed it last week. If only there was a job description
Exactly.
for these positions. Because in what I do every day for a living, we have 667 job descriptions that I can look on that and say,
Right.
are at least 70% of
Right.
these duties the same, and then go and find matches as appropriate. With elected officials, it's quite different. We're lucky if we find anything in the city charter, let alone a job description.
And I think that should be one of the recommendations that comes out of this commission, that we need to tighten that up on the charter. I looked at legislative duties, and it uses the term legislative duties. I know no more or no less about what the legislative duties are. So, yeah, I think that is an area of the charter that needs some revision.
Yep. Thanks for that.
Yes, ma'am, you're welcome.
Or I agree with this.
Okay, I think we were on table, okay, we just finished table 4,
Yes.
and then on to, I believe it's also page 5, but table 5. The difference between this one and the other slide that looks very similar to this, the only difference is where the auditor falls. On the far right, instead of it being a 5% difference in terms of being paid more than the market rate, with that new data, it's now 5% less than the market rate. So that is that difference, which corresponds with the other. On the far right, almost down there at the bottom, in between the two bars, the blue bar and the orange bar, there's a 5%. Time we looked at that, on the second slide, or excuse me, first slide really, table 1, it's negative 5%.
Oh.
Yes, and again, just so the commission's, is that the first graph shows the cities the commission agreed to study. The second graph shows the some of the same, or is it all the same cities? I think it might be all the same cities, but making a different comparison among auditors. Instead of it being an auditor to auditor or auditor to controller,
Right.
in many cases, it was auditor to CFO, to finance director,
Correct.
to other positions. So that was the difference that we found when using the auditor's office data.
And for whatever it's worth, not only are there different responsibilities for auditors here and there, some are elected, some aren't, right?
Correct.
Yeah,
Yes, and
whatever that's worth.
And in this, yes, and in the survey, we did actually ask that question for every elected official. Essentially, it was not a box to check, but could you tell us more about it? That, if that elected official is, or excuse me, if the equivalent is not an elected position. And oftentimes, it is auditors. Sometimes I think city attorneys or equivalents are appointed.
To what?
Sometimes they're appointed,
Oh, yes.
yeah, instead of being elected.
Yeah.
Okay, table 6. And again, I know you've seen this before, or a version of this before. Again, the only difference is that we're looking at different data, or excuse me, analyzing different data. So the only difference is with the last row there, the auditor, instead of it being negative 5% as it was before, it's now 5% difference. And again, this is the slide where the current salary is being added to by a percentage difference in the per capita salaries.
In the current salaries, which is, I think, the first column.
Yes,
numbers,
that's correct.
COLA hasn't hit yet, right? Or has it?
There won't be any COLA this year. The COLA won't hit until next year.
Right. And again, we do those calculations in advance toward the end of the previous year, so that everything has been calculated and verified and put in place and legislated prior to January 1st, because that's when the effective date of the new salary is, January 1st.
So I read something this week that suggested the inflation rate will reach 7% or higher this year. You were using a number just based on the 2 or 3 months of information that we had. How did you, oh, no, it was
It was
what was your assumption?
four-year
Four
average.
years, but what was your assumption for this year? How
For
did you arrive?
for this year, it was 2.23%. And the way that we arrived at that, even though there was no calculation made for 2022 for COLA based on the CPI, we went back and calculated it anyway.
Okay.
And so if there would have been a COLA this year, what would it have been? That was the question we were asking or answering.
Right.
And the answer was 2.23% compared to past COLAs, which have been right around 1.5%.
Well, I guess my question goes to, was your assumption in the 7% range for 2022?
If I remember correctly, Commissioner, the inflation rate for 2021 compared to 2020 was around 7%. Don't quote me on that.
Just
But I
round
think so.
numbers is really what-
Yes.
we can't.
Yes, and I think even Dr. Lafayette might have mentioned that as well. But I don't remember.
So there's just one more question that I have. Also in that article I've read this week, and it's an economist, of course, is saying that given the war that started sometime in January, we may see a recession in 2023. And how does that, is it offsetting? How, I assume if there's a recession, the inflationary period has ended and, well, explain to me, I have no idea what that, how I need to think through that.
Well, I think if there were a recession, that is one of the things that the charter Commission took into consideration in doing that 4-year average, and the type of formula that they specified be used. But that 4-year average takes into account things like that.
It allows for that, but I guess I'm
It
wondering,
does.
does that, inflationary period, recession is the direct opposite of inflationary.
Recession is when we want the economy to grow every year and progress. 2% is great, 3% is better, and so on. But in a recession, the economy actually pulls back, it recedes.
So do prices,
so it goes-
does the loaf of bread go up or down?
Typically, in a recession, it goes down.
Okay,
Or, pardon me, it goes up.
goes up,
Yeah,
and it also goes up in an inflationary period.
yes, yes.
So
And I don't want to get too far outside my area of expertise.
I
but,
understand, and if somebody has better,
Yeah.
better information, it's just, I'm not an economist, I have no idea what this all means, but I'm reading that these are the consequences of what is
Right.
taking place in the world today.
Well, and
I
that's,
don't know how that's gonna affect.
right, and
bounce
that
one way or
again
the
is a challenge the commission faces, is that you're not making these recommendations for this
Exactly.
year or next year. You're having to look out to beginning 2026.
And so that the salaries, as they were going to increase, given the assumptions of 5 years ago, or however many, on the one hand, we started out thinking, oh, this is gonna be much higher than what we were assuming. Okay, and now, if I enter, and the other activities going on that are affecting the economy, and now we're hitting recession, I was just wondering, is this gonna balance back, or how, you know, what's that loaf of bread gonna cost? Because what I'm, one of the things I'm concerned about is to maintain the value of the dollar, right? That's kind of what we don't want.
And to address that, I think that's one of the reasons why the Charter Commission decided on the
Try to
on the
average it out.
CPI. Well, that, but also to the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, and I know everyone's tired of hearing me say it, but that market basket of consumer goods and services, what we have to pay for that basket rises and falls every month, which is when it's studied. But when you add it up at the end of the year, how much more was that than what it was last year? One year, I went back and looked, it was 2014. The cost of it actually went down by about 0.5 percentage point.
And largely influenced by oil, my guess, because that's the
I'm
only
not
thing,
sure.
that's the only thing I see in a volatile cycle. Everything else goes up.
Darlene, do you have anything that you might contribute here in terms of what the auditor's office sees in their crystal ball in terms of inflation and so forth?
I mean, I think that we always refer to Lafayette's numbers, so.
Okay? Okay, fine.
Okay, that's.
Okay, so on the next page, Table 7, just a couple more slides to go here. Table 7 is another request that I received to take the, essentially the current salary, and this is trying that projection to look ahead. Let's take the current salary and apply that 2.23% pay increase for the COLA, the COLA adjustment every year. Let's do that through the end of the 2018 commission recommendation. So that takes it out to 2025. So that's what you see there for the first 3 years, 23, 24, and 25. Then the request was, after those calculations are completed, beginning in 2026, can the percentage differential from back on the previous slide, Table 6, be applied to those 2025 salaries? Because again, I think the reasoning for that is because you're looking at what it will be in 2026 and trying to make a recommendation presumably beginning that year in 2026. So let's look forward and see, first of all, what those salaries end up being at the end of '25. And then if these percentage differences were applied, again, going back to the per capita salary data, what would that be? And so that's what you see there. And for some reason, I have to apologize for this, everything else I think I've kept in the same order, but for whatever reason, the mayor is listed first, and then it's the city attorney, where everything else, it's been the council president, and then council member, attorney, auditor. So I'm not sure why I did that, but I know the numbers are correct. So,
Why would the mayor's salary be declined? Is this a, yeah, how is it the mayor's salary declined, actually,
it should,
over the city attorney?
it,
I'm not reading this right? I'm looking at the last column.
yeah, the difference is the percentage increase that's applied. The mayor's percentage difference to bring the mayor up to the market rate was 14%. The percentage to bring the attorney up to the market rate was 27%. And then while we're looking at those differences, the percentage to bring council president up to market rate was 40%.
Right, because the per capita didn't show a gap between, or it didn't show a distance between the mayor and the city attorney in the same way that we have been talking about it, and so that's why the city attorney is higher. But this is in line with what we saw in those previous slides.
Okay.
Now, Keisha, is this the information you were looking for?
Yes, thank you
Okay.
so much, Greg. It's helpful to see.
Oh,
it
you're
play
welcome,
out this
Commissioner.
way. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, and then the last slide, Table 8, the last request that we had was, we had looked at this data before. It was, I believe it was beginning in 2017. What you're seeing here are all of the wage increases, and again, we're calling them employee groups. MCP is not a union, so I can't say union and include MCP with that. But all employee groups, what percentage increase they received in each of those years. But instead of beginning in 2017, it begins in 2012. So you've got 11 years of data here. At the bottom, the average by group is listed, and then at the right side, the far right column, average by year.
Any questions of Greg or comments on that?
So by year, we're talking about by number of years in the collective bargaining agreement covers. So it's a 3-year.
No, Commissioner, what that shows is for that year, since we can't really include 2022, nothing has been provided or announced yet for MCP. But if we go back and look at 2021, for the entire year of 2021, if all of those employee groups were averaged out,
Oh, okay.
yes,
Oh,
what would
okay.
that be? And in that case, it'd be 2.57%.
Thank you. That answers my question.
I requested Greg to include, we received a similar document some time ago that didn't go back as far as I asked him to do. And I asked him to do that because of the document we received from the mayor's office yesterday. In the first page there at the bottom of the page, there's a table that shows the percentage increases for the 3 executive positions going back to 2012. So I saw the 0%. Nobody seemed to know why it was. So I asked Mayor Coleman, former Mayor Coleman, and he told me that because of the recession and difficult times the city was having, he told the council, the legislation that was being prepared to adopt for new salary levels, to not give him a salary increase. So that's why it was no percentage increase for 4 years. In the case of the auditor and the attorney, it says auditor, but they're the same anyhow. They received 2%, 2%, 2.5%, 2.5% over those 4 years.
Is that one legislation or several pieces of one?
So I think that's the culprit of the compression between the city auditor and attorney versus the mayor, or that's the major reason for that. In the case of the auditor and the attorney, I'm told that while they got these raises, they gave some of that money back. Do you know if that's the case, Darlene?
I'd have to go look. I don't know for sure.
Yeah. So I think all three positions, in one way or another, took a pay cut, if you will. But the legislation that was adopted that didn't provide any increase for the mayor leaves us in the position we're in today, where there's such a close resemblance in percentages.
So let me ask this, under the current, because of this charter change, could a mayor say, don't give me that cost of living? I mean, before, they were, the elected officials were making their own decisions about that, but now that we have a compensation commission, and let's say there is a recession next year, and we are tied to collective bargaining agreements, we've obligated ourselves to increase by what that chart shows. Maybe this is a legal question, really. Given the charter amendment, could the elected officials come back and say, you know, we're bound to our collective bargaining increases. We got a real tight budget. Let's skip this year.
I think that the answer is probably yes. They probably could do that, similar to what former Mayor Coleman did.
So the caveat, I think, was they were going through this process, and so before legislation passed, he talked to city council and had his increase cut.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's the timing of it. It would be before the legislation goes up for vote, yeah.
And that's, I mean, the question is raised because if in fact the auditor and attorney gave back some of their increase, then these numbers would be reduced.
Well,
Right?
if
If they were awarded 2% and said, okay, I agree with the mayor, I'm gonna give up 1% of mine. Even though the legislation permitted, even though, yes, permitted the increase, and they elected not to take it, you know, how does that affect the spread? Right? Because they only took 1%.
Well, we're a number of
Does it bounce
years.
up? Does it
we're-
bounce up somewhere?
We're a number of years after those 4 years where the mayor's salary didn't
It
increase.
didn't increase at the same rate. I see that across the board.
Yeah, but I don't know.
Well,
I'm
not
going
across-
back to, I'm not sure what your point is, Fred. All I'm trying to point out here is that the mayor didn't get a salary increase in 2012, 13, 14, and 15 because he requested that there not be a salary increase given to him. So he didn't get an increase in his salary.
Right.
In the case of the auditor and the attorney, I'm told that while they did receive increases in the legislation, they gave some of that money back. Now, I can't confirm that, but I've been told that.
I confirm that through the legislation itself, Mr. Chairman. And that's what I wanted to specify or clarify, is that the difference is that the pay increases at the time were legislated for all of the elected officials, with the exception of the mayor. And that was by the current mayor, the mayor at the time, by the mayor's request. So what we saw is that the salary for the space, the salary for the position increased over those years. Not the mayor, but the other elected officials continued to increase.
Okay.
Whether or not the faces, the people in those jobs, accepted the salary increase or not, the salary
Oh,
for
I see
the
what you're
job
saying. I see what you're
continued to go up.
Yeah.
Pardon me. And I actually recall where one elected official actually returned the pay increase to the city treasury, and another outright refused the pay increase.
Okay.
What the difference is with the mayor, that salary was never even legislated at all. So what you see here in this graph is that prior to 2011, the percentage differential was 12%, 11% the year before, 8% the year before that, 8% the year before that. There was an anomaly there, but 8.5% when this begins in '05. So there was that separation, but then over that period of 2012 through 2015, not only did that Mayor Coleman at the time not accept it, he apparently said, don't even legislate it. So what that has done over this period of time since then is it's created this imbalance between what was once a fairly significant differential between the mayor's salary and other elected officials.
And I would say that, so in 16, because I'm assuming now we're back on track, they're accepting the cost of living increases. That would be a legislative number, right? So that 2.5 would be 2.5 of what his 2011 ending salary would have been? Or the mayor, I'm trying to take people out of this picture because.
Right.
Well, it'd be
I think
2.5 over what his salary was in
In 2011.
2015. Well, 2011 and,
Which was the last.
And it was
well,
the same.
2011, 12,
it was the
13,
same
14,
salary
15,
since
they're all the
2011.
same.
Right.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
So it's 2.5% of that number. Yeah.
Right. And recall, if you will, the first commission was seated in 2015 and made recommendations for 2018. So the 2018 recommendations are the first year for any kind of charter
I'm wondering why they didn't.
mandated
They didn't
recommendations.
rebalance it at that point. Because
and-
they still made recommendations below
Exactly.
the others.
Right, and I think that's the question that the commission's grappling with now, is that over this period of time, 4 years without any percentage increase, that position, that job, that happens to be the mayor, has not grown at the same or a similar rate as all of the other elected officials have. So when you look at that percentage difference, it's much lower today than what it once was,
Until we
historically
get to
speaking.
2019.
Well, yeah, but the magic of, the magic
I'm just
of,
wondering what happened, not the numbers, I'm just saying something here isn't flowing correct in my mind. I mean, I accept all of what happened.
Oh, I
but
remember,
for
I
some
have an
reason,
answer to that, Commissioner.
Why did the mayor go up at that point?
Yeah, yes, the reason for that is because, I do remember this, in the 2018 commission, or excuse me, 2015 commission, making recommendations for 2018, the percentage increases that you see there for 2018, 19, and 20 had already been legislated for the mayor going out to that point. So the first time that the mayor's salary was affected by a COLA adjustment was 2021. And that's where, that's the reason why they're all equal in 2021.
Okay,
It was
so the
previously legislated
18
for the mayor.
commissions- The first commission was 15,
Making recommendations beginning in 2018.
18. And then the 2018 commission is making recommendations that started in 2021.
That started this year, 2022.
2022.
January 1st, 2022.
And so up between 2018 2015 and 2020? It was legislated.
It was legislated in advance.
So they didn't really have much effect at all on salary increase, the first commission.
The
I mean, if it was
first,
legislated,
as far as the mayor's salary is
well,
concerned,
how
the
about
first,
all the salaries?
well, the other salaries had already been finished in terms of legislation. So everything that was recommended for, in 2015, beginning in 2018, was for all of the other elected officials, if I'm remembering correctly, other than the mayor. The mayor's salary was legislated previously all the way up to 2020.
Quick question. When was that legislated? Do you know? Because that was something that,
I could find out, but off the top of my head, I don't recall.
okay, I just wanted to get clarity on, because if, what I'm hearing you say, which I haven't heard before this, is that essentially the mayor's salary was legislated up through 2020 through legislation that was not of the commission. So that means the 2015 commission they did not legislate anything for the mayor's salary. That was done previously by some other legislation, but that commission legislated for the city attorney, the city auditor, and both council president and council members. And so the first time that the mayor's salary was legislated was in 2021 by the 2018 commission.
And the reasoning for that is, yes, everything you're saying is correct, and the reasoning for that is because it had already been legislated. Now, I think they might have just,
What would the effect of, so
I
a charter
guess I
amendment
just-
comes in, wouldn't that have overridden? I mean, it is what it is, but.
I think they
I think
discussed
that's the
repealing
point,
it.
though. It kind of is what it is. I want to understand how we want to use this to make the decisions that we need to make today.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And as I did a week ago, I brought you something to shoot at. I've got you a new document to consider. I hope all these, my math is good. I don't have a Excel to use.
That did not work.
That's all right. I get it.
So this is, the format of this is just like the document I gave you last week. The changes are, just like last week, I presumed a 3% COLA in all of the years beginning in 2023, and then through the 26, 27, 28, and 29 years that we're responsible for making a recommendation for. In the document from the mayor's office, their final paragraph ask us to consider a separation between the mayor's salary and the auditor and attorney, equal in base pay between 10 and 20%. I'm proposing here in this document a 7.5% increase for the mayor. That will roughly create a 10% differential between the mayor and the attorney and auditor. I don't know, Greg, maybe you have a more accurate number, but let me go, before you get into that, let me go on through the spreadsheet there. The attorney and auditor would get COLAs in all of the years and no other boost. The council president, I reduced that number from 15% to 10%, and for council members from 10% to 5%. So I throw that out there to you for your consideration and comment and discussion.
I was heavily influenced by Sarah's earlier view of looking at this as to what effect it may have on collective bargaining. And if I'm looking on the one chart and saying 2% and 3% increases, a 10% or 7.5% and 10%, maybe even the 5% for city council in 1 year, I think could have an impact. You know, if he's worth 10% more, I'm worth 10% more. or she, again, I gotta take the faces off the, he or she is worth that, underpaid, I'm underpaid, I feel underpaid too. And that's why I kind of like this median thing, which seemingly was based on a universal standard
Right.
that employers use. You know, it's really not apples to apples, but it kind of, I'm sure, will lean that way if we start. And I think maybe we must have thought about that as well in the last commission, and that's why we kind of stopped. We didn't give a COLA the first year, kind of, okay, let's let this plant, you know, let's settle it, see if it, how it roots, and then we'll start to, you know, to move forward. So these are the two things I'm trying to figure out a formula for. You know, we don't, in trying to calculate the salaries of the elected officials, we don't want to cause that bigger budget, which is the salaries of everybody. And it seems like just about everybody is covered now in some form of collective bargaining, to say, okay, so if the city's got this kind of money, if you could do it for him, you could do it for me. That's my point, and get me out of that.
Well,
if I can.
I think it's a fair discussion. I think the difference for me, though, is, and Greg, keep me honest on how you all do it here. So what we're looking at for the elected officials, I mean, they're essentially behind. In the collective bargaining, those individuals aren't behind. That's their annual increase, their annual COLA, so on and so forth. And so Greg would be using median. Are you the negotiator with them? I want to make sure what I'm saying you're doing.
I don't
it.
negotiate, I
Okay,
contribute to
right,
the
okay.
process, but
So Greg and team would be providing similar data to them as they're going through that process as well. So to me, it's not necessary, the 3% that we saw on the previous page isn't an apples to apples comparison to me to what we're seeing on this page from the standpoint of what the data that we've seen thus far shows is that the mayor is behind, city council president is behind. And so we would be bringing them to where they should be, and then subsequently they would get their 3%, 2%, or whatever, which would then be an apples to apples comparison. So, and then if I were to react to Michael's proposal, I don't think that the data shows us that the attorney for sure should not get an increase. If we decide to take the auditor data as well, right, then potentially increase is deserving there as well. Which is why I think, again, the data that we were provided around per capita really feels like the anchor. I know that for some, a 40% increase feels like a lot to stomach. But again, if someone is behind, what we would want to do from an integrity standpoint is pay them what they should be getting paid. And so I don't have heartburn around large numbers like that when we know the data shows that they're behind. So for me, the 7.5 for the mayor feels low, and we really should be looking at that 14 that the data shows us that position is behind, and then potentially looking at, do we want to add more to that to create that gap that we've been talking about? But these feel too low to me based on what the data suggests.
Yeah, I just want to, specific to the collective bargaining piece, I'm not disagreeing with anything that's been said. But when you go into collective bargaining, you're bargaining for an entire unit, not necessarily individual pieces, right? And the bargaining units do not get COLA. I mean, that's the
Right.
increase, right? And they have other things within it's just very different. It's hard to compare. And they're not bargaining individually, they're bargaining collectively, right? So,
And they're separate from the electeds.
Very
Oh, clearly, yeah.
And they are also, they go through the similar analysis that is comparable to those particular units.
yeah,
So,
yeah, it's just,
it sort of works out that way, but, you know, a flat 3%, all of what we talked about in terms of inflation, recession, this, that, pandemics, all, it doesn't apply to them.
yeah.
And so this, what we're doing is far more volatile, except you don't recapture, you know? So you know, the base, the anchor. The anchor gives me comfort because, and I don't care, I don't know what that percentage would mean. I don't know what that number, I haven't really studied it thoroughly, but if it says he needs, 14%, not 7.5, I'm saying that, I'll hang on that. I'll hang on that comfortably.
Right.
I'm less comfortable, because even in collective bargaining, this is the median income. I mean, I'm not, just the point you make, even the positions that are being collectively bargained, this is the median income. We're negotiating around the median income. So, the more I think about it, it's, and then I don't care about what the percentages are as much as and they're all gonna get increased.
Right.
Everybody, except maybe the auditor, unless we analyze the situation to argue or say, it's more encompassing in Columbus than
Right.
other places.
I did just want to note briefly that for like the past almost like 15 plus years, the city auditor and the city attorney have been paid at the same rate
Yeah.
since I think 2005. So just sharing that as additional knowledge and data points to know when you're thinking about that.
Are you saying that they were paid differently before 2005?
I don't know, I can't remember the exact
As
proportion.
best
but
I
know.
recall, as best I recall, they've always been paid the same.
And it might be,
I think you're
I just know I got the number from 2005, but I don't know, it could have been like even back further than that, but I know at least since 2005, for certain, they've been paid the same.
Yeah,
And the market changes, though. I
Yeah.
mean, there are some times where positions are paid the same, and then something happens in the market where a position that was paid the same over a 10-year period is no longer paid the same. Not suggesting that that's the case here, but I don't think the fact that they were paid the same for the last 10 years should necessarily be our determination.
Yeah, I was just saying, just for the information.
Well, and also if we're going by, the per capita median salary, both would get an increase, although it'd be different, right? There's a gap, but both would be receiving an increase under that scenario as well. Whether we decided for it to be the same percentage or not is a different
Right.
question.
So breaking it down a little bit, I think one question we could ask ourselves, since we're going to be using a CPI, are we comfortable with the recommendation of Bill Lafayette? So that, we can take that off the
Yes.
board.
Yeah.
Then we only decide when does it start. So if we're all cities, if we're in agreement there, that just takes one issue off the
Yeah.
board.
I'm comfortable with using
Me
what
too.
Bill suggests, yeah.
Agreed.
Agreed.
For
I think
the-
the average is
Okay, I
great.
think we're in unanimous agreement on that.
So that'll adjust the salaries accordingly.
And just to be clear, that's the all cities,
cities.
all major cities CPI, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, okay,
Class A.
that's resolved.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not
It's not Class A.
Oh, it's not.
It's all cities, blank, non-adjusted. I can't remember what was in the blank.
All US cities,
All US city average.
average.
I have it written
I
down.
actually printed that out, but.
Okay.
I have it written
Well,
down. I
well,
just
I
wrote down the
I didn't
right
bring
one.
that either.
Well, it's.
can get it here.
I think the point is, it's not the regional.
Right,
It's the all cities,
Yeah, I
yes.
think the regional industries are valuable.
It's-
Whatever it was.
And
that
it's an
Bill
anchor.
recommended, that's what I-
Right, exactly.
It is.
It gives us an anchor.
CPIU, all items in US city average, all urban consumers not seasonally adjusted.
Easily adjusted.
Okay, okay, so we've resolved that. So really, what we have to figure out is what, if anything, we want to give the elected officials in that first year of 2026. What percentage increase do we want to give them, if anything, if any?
So I'm just going to continue to advance that. I think the median data is customary. It provides us a solid anchor if someone were to ask how you arrived at that. It aligns with the comparison data, and we would just need to decide median option 1 or option number 2. And I'm fairly agnostic to
So,
either.
so you're saying, with the median data, that includes, basically, the city attorney would be the highest paid, about, it looks like a $20,000 difference, but a 13% difference from mayor And then from there, the auditor, depending upon if we do, the first set or the second set.
Well, and what I would say to that, Sarah, is that I am supportive of us. So we talked last time about art and science.
Yep.
And so to me, this is the science. The art might be, do we feel like the mayor should
Yep.
make more? And if so, then we would adjust from
Adjust
there.
accordingly from
Yeah.
I second that. I'm totally in favor of that. I want the anchor.
Yes, exactly.
I want
Exactly.
the anchor. When are we gonna do that? Now, if it's too much, then we can stop. Yeah, the other thing I said to Keisha on the way up, let's face it, I'm not gonna be a real taxpayer when these salaries go into effect. I might not be alive. So, I mean, the more important thing is this is your city at this point. And I'm gonna balance some of the art based upon what I'm gonna be hearing from the three of you, not so much what given my history, the mayor says, hey, the city needs his money, I'm not taking an increase. And persuades the other the other elected officials to do the same. That might not be the way politics is run in your life. So it's, the art part of this is really, I think, I'm leaning very heavily upon what I hear from you.
But
Not that I agree, but what I hear.
He can only make that decision every 4 years when this committee comes
Right.
back to the table.
And, I'm not in that game. So, if you will, what are some of your thoughts around what anchoring to the median, which gives everybody a bump? And I think the three positions we're really concerned about are auditor, city attorney, and mayor.
Right.
How do
Well,
how do we adjust
council
off of that?
Well, but I think from there, unless you were saying that we should add more to that, I think theirs feel where they should be. The problem with the mayor, though, is that he's less than the other one. Unless you're suggesting, Keisha, that we should add to council members and the council president.
Well, I mean, I guess I'm looking at, when I look at council president, that is the largest gap that I see on here percentage-wise, right? So I agree that the data says, yes, it looks like everyone to be brought up would get an increase, and I'm not arguing against it. I think that's fine. But I think too, then, the question is, I know that the previous commission, so right, so what's been discussed so far, and I'm just gonna repeat what you said, because you're the first one to go, is that these numbers feel low when we look at what the gap is, the numbers that
That might-
Chair
yep,
Kassler
yep,
set
yep.
forth. And so the question now is, do we want to, like the last commission that you and Commissioner Rancier said on, you said we tried to catch people up, but we weren't comfortable doing, it was so large. And so that is an option here as well. I agree that everyone should get an increase. I also think that I'm looking at what the differentials are, and I think differential makes sense for those leadership, not that those aren't leadership roles, but given the size and scope of responsibility for the roles. So I guess the question is, right, are we all in agreement that everyone should receive an increase? Maybe that's the first one, and then from there, what are we comfortable with percentage-wise? Knowing that if we want to create a differential for the mayor, that could be really, really large if we go with what's currently here.
So I like where you're going, and so maybe we should just take each line and do the mayor last. And that way we'll determine
Yes.
what the difference needs to be.
Excuse me, Commissioners, if you wouldn't mind if I threw something out there, just in general compensation practice. I know that we've already provided and you've reviewed the original salary data. The original salary data, again, in general compensation practice, that's what we look at. I understand that you're wanting data analyzed in another way, in an additional way to look at it per capita, but making a decision solely based on per capita data may not be the best way to go with it, where you're also considering the original data that was provided for, the actual salary data not looked at but from a per capita perspective, but also from, what does this city make, what does the city make, and so on.
Do
So,
you have that today?
I've given a lot of thought to that.
yes,
What does?
I don't think I have enough for everyone,
Well,
but
we're
I
making
think
a
I can go
decision.
back and find that. I just wanted to throw that back out there, that was kind of the original thought process, I believe. And then this just happens to be more recent. I didn't want the commission to, not necessarily that you're neglecting, but I guess maybe forget that original data
So this
that
gets
we
the
looked at.
separation piece.
Let me see what I can find.
This gets, because if we looked at that, when we're looking at that data, I think what you're gonna see is our mayors on the high end compensation.
Yeah, I mean, it's in the chart too. It says 204, right?
So this, it gives us less room to put the R on it.
Which data, weren't, so you're saying that these two tables in this spreadsheet,
No.
what the,
There was the other, was it average?
He was saying, he was looking, before, when we first started giving you all data, we gave you data from the comparative series, so that's what the survey was. And he was, I think, and Greg, correct me if I was wrong, but he was saying even if you're gonna look at the per capita median data, in terms of what you're thinking of kind of bringing them to the median, don't forget that this is also in comparison to other similarly situated cities. So all those 16 cities that we utilized to kind of look at to see like what they were paying their mayors, city auditors, council members, council president, et cetera. I think he was just saying to make sure you're also keeping that in
That was
mind.
factored into this data. That's
So
what
did I.
this is starting to
It
get
is-
frustrating to me, to be
It
quite
is,
honest.
it is factored into that data. You asked for an additional way to review the data, and so that's what was provided.
But if it's
It was
already
by
in the data,
population.
but if it's in the data, right, the additional data that we're asking for should not separate that. We should be, I think what we were originally asking for was to see the universe together.
Right.
And that's what we thought this was.
Yeah, and it is. It applies population to it. Yes.
Right, because we
And-
were looking for an anchor. So you
yes.
provided us a lot of things that could be the
Right,
anchor, and this is the anchor that we
Right.
chose.
And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to steer it back in any other direction or anything like that. I was just reminding the commission that there was
Yeah.
the original part of the
So
data,
I
I
have it
guess.
here.
Not other data, not different data, but the original part of it,
Yeah.
yes.
If we were using mayor-based salary as
Mm-hmm.
the anchor, our mayor is, only in Jacksonville do they make more.
Mm-hmm.
And not that much more. I mean, what we're proposing is a much higher,
But,
I'm
but,
looking- I'm
but,
looking at- I'm
right,
looking at-
but again, when you look at it in terms of population, do you want to look at it that way and say, well, the population of Columbus should play a significant factor in
I
that?
think it
And I,
should.
and I
That's what we
believe
said
that's
last
what you're
time, which
doing.
is why we
Yes,
landed
and I
on
believe
this.
that's what you're doing.
Census information and all of that has come
Yep.
in shows we are growing and very few other cities in the country are.
Absolutely. And that's what
so,
you're doing.
yeah,
Right.
Right.
I have to tell you, if this is what we're talking about here?
That is what we're talking
Yeah.
about. But we were going to go line by line to say, do we think, so let's start at the bottom. Auditor, 5%. Is that what we want to move forward with?
Well, that's where I'll say, and pardon me if I'm the guy that says, well, that's the way it's always been. But I feel, I don't feel comfortable coming up with a number that's for the auditor and the attorney that are different. Now, you may decide that you want to go with something different, but that's just the way I feel.
So are you supportive of the 5% for the auditor, and then you would want the attorney to also only have 5%?
Or, yeah, whatever number we come up with for the auditor, I would support that same number for the attorney.
So then let's start with the auditor. How much do we want to do for the auditor, if anything?
I'm going to just interject real quick and just indicate, I know that the goal is consensus, but ultimately, the
Right.
motion second and majority vote.
Right?
Right, right.
Well, I feel like based off of what I'm seeing here with the difference and also what the office provided in terms of the additional duties that the auditor carries for our city, I am comfortable with the 5%.
As am I.
Okay?
Increase. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yes.
We're not talking about decreasing.
Yes, yes.
5%
Okay.
increase
Yeah.
plus COLA.
And are you in agreement on that, Fred?
Yes, on the 5%.
Okay.
we are.
Let me just ask a quick
Well-
question. I heard Commissioner Ingles say about 5% plus COLA. So, and this is something that kind of was discussed earlier. So when you're thinking about COLA, the average of the past 4 years is 2%, 2.23% to be specific. So are you wanting to say 5% plus COLA, or do you want to say 7%? So it's just a flat, we're going to increase it 7%, because that takes into consideration both the COLA and the suggested increase.
In year one.
I guess my,
Yes.
yeah.
In
That's
year-
a very
in-
good
in-
point,
in
and
year
we
one.
need to be very clear about that, because I guess in my head, I said that, and then in my head, I'm thinking 5% for that first year to bring salary, and then COLA after that, and I
Like the
wasn't
last
thinking.
Right, so you can,
That's how
so
we did it.
there are a couple of
That's a very good
options
point.
in terms of, like, if you want it to be 5% flat, you could say, in your mind, 3% increase, 2% COLA, put those together, and you have 5% total, but it's a flat rate of 5% when you write it in the, like, when you write it in, like, the ordinance, so it would say an increase of 5%, and then it would be plus COLA, plus COLA, plus COLA for years 27, 28, and 29.
Well, the difference is, I think we've agreed, correct me if I'm wrong, that in all of the out years after 2026, we'll go with the COLA that we just, the difference, I believe, is that if you do the 5%, that's a number that, with certainty, we don't know what the COLA is going to be, right?
Right.
Theoretically, I suppose the COLA could be more than 5%. Maybe not, I don't know. But I mean, given that inflation appears to be going up, the number, CPI number for 2022 is going to be considerably higher than it has been in recent years, right?
Could be.
I mean, I made a case last week for, in the first year, doing the percentage increase plus the COLA because of the unknown percentage of what the COLA is going to be. So what's the commission's wish here?
Yeah, I don't want to do, if we're going to say somebody's getting a 5% increase, I don't want to do that 3 and 2, because this is how people get behind. So if where they're behind is 5%, we need to move them up to the 5% and then decide, are we adding the additional COLA on this year or in subsequent years? But if you start to break down that 5% that you're giving somebody, then that's exactly how people get behind, and we end up having to give somebody a 40% increase.
If I can just clarify, so I wasn't saying to break it down, but I'm saying in your mind, like, if you were thinking of it in terms of, I want to give them 5%, and if you don't do a COLA, it would be, technically, it would be like, okay, if we're going to estimate the COLA at 2%, and the 3%, it would be a total of 5%. So when you legislated it, it would say an increase of 5% for year 2026 and nothing else. And then for the remainder years, it would be just plus COLA, because you have to do the increase all at once. So I guess more so, I was just kind of clarifying that if you want to, if you're thinking, if you don't want to think about the COLA at all, you can just say a flat rate, I want to catch the person up by 5% and no COLA, and then the COLA will not apply that year, the first year, but it'll apply in the remainder years, kind of like with the last commission. You don't have to do it that way, but it can be a little bit confusing, saying, okay, you're going to get this increase, and it's like potential COLA, so that means it's like I'm getting this increase plus whatever COLA. And so if your intention is a certain thing, I was just trying to factor in what your intended end goal is with the COLA. Does that make sense?
It does.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Please.
No, please. I was just saying, I felt like when Sarah said 5% plus the COLA, and maybe you weren't, but the way that I heard it was, yes, we want to do the increase and we want to do the cost of living adjustment so that people don't get behind.
Yeah.
Okay?
Because if you increase it 5%, but COLA's 7%, you've actually lost 2% that
Right.
year.
Okay. And that's what I was just trying
Okay,
to clarify.
so to
And we
be,
can't guess.
so to be clear here, so I can be clear, we're talking about a 5% in 2026. All of the years after that, 27, 28, 29, it's just adding on the COLA. okay?
Correct.
So in 2026, if the auditor's increase was 5% plus the COLA, that's what we're talking about in 2026, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, let's just put that aside and move on, and then when we get through them all, we'll see what it looks like, and then maybe we can vote, okay?
Sounds good to me.
Okay, the attorney.
I
So
think
you're-
high.
What'd you
I
say?
think 27 is politically high.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would be a shock to
Yeah.
a lot of people. I mean, 40% also would be the
Yes,
same thing.
those numbers, yeah. And that's the way the media's going to print it.
Oh, yeah.
So I think that's, you know,
But if what we're saying is that the auditor and the attorney, we want to keep those closer because of, that's how it's been? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's, for as long back as I know, the attorney and the auditor have had the same salaries.
look, one question is why. This goes back to the absence of
Yep.
job descriptions. I mean, it has always been, but, so has it always been that council is part-time and, I mean, there's a lot of history, but it's how do we get forward with this?
Which one of these? Yeah. Which
You
one is
know,
actually auditing, which one is attorney? Do we know?
You got my point. I don't want to get stuck on that question. I would just rather say both of them get 5%. I wouldn't want to get stuck on the question as this has been a historic, because I'm not sure that that's correct. At some point, the auditor responsibilities may be far greater, that crime goes away and the auditor's responsibilities become much greater, or vice versa. I mean, I've seen that happen in industry. Accountants kind of became, a preferred class over what previously were lawyers. And, there's a shift of sand. And I guess I would rather say about their salaries been equivalent, give us some job descriptions. And let's measure the job descriptions, and that will help fix that, or deal with that.
Okay, but we don't have job
We don't
descriptions.
have them.
So we have to,
So I'm saying, I guess I'm agreeing with you, but not on the basis of your,
okay,
Argument.
it's always
Gotcha.
been. I can live with it for this purpose, but it's a good illustration of why I think it's going to become more and more important that we have specific descriptions that future commissions have specific descriptions to measure, and to measure that time in our history to make whatever adjustments that have to be made, up, down, same, continuously. It's,
well, maybe we should, one of our recommendations should be that the city consider creating job descriptions for the elected officials. That's really not our job, but we can recommend that, and they can do whatever they want with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
right.
So let's include that, Naya, in our report, please.
So it looks like the majority is for the 5%. I just do want to go on record to say that I do think it should be higher than 5% based on the fact that the data suggests that we're 27% off. We also know that this position does require a JD in a way that we heard that the auditor doesn't require a CPA. And so 5% feels way off from the 27% that per capita suggests, but
Would you have a recommendation? And you're making a very strong point here. And would you have a recommendation above the 5%? What range would you?
well, I would probably be more comfortable going somewhere in the middle, so, 12%.
So then the question, I think, what, I'm speaking for myself, but I'm putting it on the table generally. Do we feel public officials can adequately justify 12%? 5% is pretty easy. And
Well,
that's-
I'm gonna be advocating for more here in a second, so
Okay, okay.
12% is,
So, okay, therein lies you know.
Should we move on and come back to that, or
No,
should we
this
try
is,
to get some
this
resolution
one we
here?
gotta resolve.
Yeah, 12% would take it at an increase of $24,040. And if you add that to current salary, so that would take the salary visually, so we can see it, it's $224,379.68.
In 2025,
Yeah.
2026.
2026. And so what
That's a what percent?
At 12%, that's what that would be.
what appeals to me,
224,000.
Kiana, was the comments being made. We don't want to put in a number where we fall further behind.
Right.
And that's
Right.
why I'm splitting, I'm moving around on my thinking here. We, you know, maybe we have to do something here, otherwise some future commission's gonna have a bigger issue to overcome.
Commissioner Ingles, do you mind repeating that number for me, please?
$224,379.68.
224, 379.68?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, is,
Keisha didn't vote yet. She might be able to be a tiebreaker.
Oh, are we voting now? Did you
No, I
have
just-
another number in mind?
I know.
well, I want to be clear on what we're talking about. Are we talking about a 12% plus, what about the COLA?
Nicola would still be on there.
So it'd be 12% plus the COLA, right?
If
The
that's
number
a
you gave us
comfortable
was just the
Right,
12%, right?
exactly.
I'm not choosing a number.
5% is still on the table, too.
Yeah, right, right.
I'm not choosing the number as much as illustrating what the issue,
Tell me that number again, two what?
how much do we want the risk of falling behind? And how do you catch up? You know, what's going to be the process for getting that fixed? Politically, it's not going to help whoever's holding these positions, you know, to be justifying too large of an increase. That's, when public service has been the whole theme behind all of these positions, every one of them. That's how they fell behind industry and market and everything else, because it was public service. And why are we paying so much? That's really the challenge that those who are running and those who are going to face the public are going to have to deal with. So I kind of, you know, we're kind of slicing this.
Let's move on up the chart
It's
to
hard to
council.
do, but also I think, you know, when we look at the chart, the city attorney's pretty far behind, so, I mean,
Is that-
not really, I mean, he's like 6.
He's in a better position, yeah.
So whoever city attorney is at that time. status
Keisha,
quo.
what were your thoughts?
I mean, I think I agree that if we're going based off of the data per capita, then I think, you know, it does warrant a larger increase than the auditor for the reasons you said. But I also, I just want to hear if anybody else has another number that they're comfortable with.
12 or 13.
That's what Kiana said.
As a counter to 12.
See, I'm not wed to the per capita formula. And it's, from my perspective, it's more important to keep the attorney and the auditor at parity. But that may not be the wishes of the
And
commission.
are you saying
That's
that
fine.
your reasoning for that is because that's the way it's always been? Do you have other reasoning?
Yeah, I think they're positions of comparable importance for the health of the city and the health of city government. And I guess that's what I'm tying it to. I mean, I hate to sound like that's the way it's always been, but in this situation, I think that that's the way it's always been has some importance to me. But maybe not to you folks. And that's okay. I mean, that's okay, if that's your wish.
Sarah, what do you think?
It is a hard spot because the auditor in the city does do a lot, and the attorney also does a lot. And I think, when I think of the auditor and the attorney, I really do kind of think of them as similar, but different positions of power, but similar in, I guess, the stature. I would support an increase because that's what the data seems to suggest, and that's something that we could support. But the very large increases, I think, politically can be hard for the public to digest. And, you know, I think that what we've talked about, the 12%, is as kind of a number in between. So we're not giving that full 27% merit, even though we've given the full 5% that the data suggests and supports. Might make more sense in order to hedge that reality. I might even be inclined to support a little less if that's how the commission feels, is that these, you know, two positions really are similar stature.
So,
It would merit.
does it affect your decision, or your feeling, or position that you take, that when you add the COLA over 5 years, that so what some data we don't have, you know, how are city attorneys, you know, do all of these that we're comparing with have COLAs?
Well, I don't know.
I don't know the
I
answer to
think
that. but-
For city attorneys elsewhere too, you know, I assume that they're doing similar jobs and that they are, attorney is more clear to me. One, I'm an attorney, and
Right.
two, it is more clear to me, you're enforcing city code and city law, right? So, in other cities, that's what, you know, the value would be, so that's the per capita number that we're looking at.
But we're gonna also be proposing an increase year over year.
Yes.
And so if we said we're starting at 13% and we're adding 10%, we're, you know, the gap is, we've narrowed the gap, the anchor gap,
I think, yeah.
given the COLA adjustments. So that's my only point. I don't know, we don't know whether COLA is affecting the salaries of auditors, controllers, or
Yeah.
any of those
But I-
positions, any of the positions.
I guess in my mind, I just think of COLA as status quo.
Right.
So like, to me, the COLA doesn't play in. It's
Okay.
really, is the position
Okay.
worth a larger salary?
And one thing I also wanted to, we've discussed, I don't know if we voted on the mayor's differential. And so
Right.
thinking about if
Right.
we're
Yeah.
taking the attorney to 12, and then if we still want a differentiation between the mayor and right, just reminding us that is something that we
Right.
talked about a
And-
lot.
Absolutely.
And we would be creating the differential between the mayor and the auditor. It's much, much bigger, right? So, depending upon
So
how
not that
large
that
we do.
Oh, no,
changes,
fine,
just
yeah.
reminding us that if we when we decide on this, then when we
Yeah.
come to the mayor, that will be.
But we always
And
have
that's
the
why
anchor
we-
to go back to.
Well, exactly, and that's why we have to decide on the attorney now, so that we can decide about the differential with the mayor.
So 10%,
Which one are we voting on?
10%.
I would support an equal increase for the attorney and the auditor, whatever you want that number to be. But if you're all in agreement with, what, 12% was it? I won't get in the way of that.
Sarah said, or some lesser number.
Yeah.
What if, how do you feel about some number between 12 and 5% for both positions? The same number, whatever it would
A
be.
little less,
I don't-
if it means we're done, I'll vote for it. But I'm a little less comfortable
Agreed.
with that.
Yeah.
That's something the Charter
And we're taking
Commission needs to
auditor
look
over.
at and put this in, and I think deservingly, for many of the thoughts that you have, but we don't have that.
Yeah.
And we can't make that up. And so the data we do have, we have to respect it or reject it. It's kind of,
And I know that this is not private industry, so I recognize that. This is an elected position. You take certain things when you come to public office. But 224, 379 as the top attorney is really not that much.
Exactly.
When I think about how much attorneys are making that are in similar.
how many lawyers are in that firm?
A lot.
I mean, you know, he's 100 lawyers, let's say.
Yeah, 80, somewhere between probably
You know,
80 to 100.
I mean, that's a mid-sized law
And
firm in
that's-
this community.
Yeah, that's a partner salary, certainly at a larger firm. certainly.
at the same
But
size.
many attorneys
it
in
would
this city
probably
are
be
making
at
that
least
or
double.
way more, plus bonuses and everything else.
But I would say the same for the head of an accounting firm.
Yes, yeah,
It would be,
yep. That's the dilemma.
yeah.
But back to the data, though, the data supports a 5% increase for the auditor, so if we go above that, because we want to try to close the gap between the attorney, now we are
Right.
Yeah,
going above the data that we have.
correct.
So one suggestion, seeing that we gotta go through this in another 4, depending on how you wanna play it, keep it the same, whatever that increase is, and then look at job descriptions in the next go-round of compensation.
We gotta get,
No,
we
that
we
takes
gotta,
us
we
out the
gotta
data.
right the wrong here.
Yeah, it takes us out the
Yeah, I
data,
think-
and
I
it's
think
gonna
so.
imbalance it's down the
We
road.
gotta right the wrong.
Well, what's the process we're gonna use here? Do you want to agree on, or see if we can't agree on some number for the attorney, and then move on up the chart, or?
Yes.
I think we do the attorney, then the mayor, then
Yeah.
do council.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's 12, we heard half, 10%, what's the
I'm
reaction?
good with 10%.
I can be
Kiana,
fine
how
with
do you
10.
I can be fine with
I could be fine with 10 as well.
10% for the
Attorney.
city
Yes.
attorney?
Yep.
I think.
Can I
that the
convince
data
you
more than
10% for the city auditor?
You can,
5%.
I cannot.
you can't convince me,
Okay.
but it does.
No, yeah, I'm with Keanu on that.
The data
It is
doesn't
what it
support
is, and we didn't create this.
Right.
This
Okay.
situation.
That's not to say that I don't, in my mind, see those two
Exactly.
positions.
Absolutely,
Absolutely.
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 Like, I mean, I just
I'm not
want to
really-
be on
that's not
record
the-
to say that
that's
I
not
don't
the
want that to
position
be
we're
what this is about,
Right.
right? Like, this is about the data that we have in front of us, what we're using as an anchor. Nobody in this room doesn't value the city auditor, and so I don't want this to
You know,
start to
frankly,
become
I
a
think it's the most-
conversation about who's valuing what position, because that's not what this is.
Okay?
Given the growth of this city, our AAA bonding, it impacts all of central Ohio. If we drop from AAA to AA, it affects Dublin, it affects counties all around us, because we're the ones building the roads, we're the ones providing the water, we're the ones providing the sewer.
So what should,
It could be argued this is the most important position in the city.
so,
But I don't have a description that says that.
well, we've had the city auditor here tell us what she does. We know what she does. We don't have a job description, but we know what she does, don't we?
Take her out of it. The office.
Well,
Take her out. She may not be the auditor in 2025. I'm not voting salaries for individuals. I'm dealing with positions. That position right now goes beyond the borders. Its impact goes on beyond the borders of this city.
That and the data that we're using is the data that was provided by the auditor's office. So,
okay.
Just let me point out that I mentioned that none of those jobs are comparable in the survey. None of the jobs are comparable.
I mean, and while I appreciate that, I mean,
I think
I don't know what
we're
we
addressing
base
that.
anything off of then.
But Kiana, you're
I
addressing
agree.
it by saying
I agree,
5%
you
up
don't- you
anyway.
don't.
You know,
It's just
Well,
hard.
well,
I
let me.
agree. You
let-
don't have anything to base it off.
Let me ask this. They're not, you say they're not comparable.
No.
Are there positions that do more than our city auditor does? I mean, what I've heard being said is that our city auditor has all of these responsibilities that maybe other city auditors don't have this piece or that piece.
Here's what I'm starting to feel challenged by. Are you with the city attorney's office? He's not arguing the city attorney piece. We don't have somebody saying this, like, this is starting to feel a little convoluted, right? So it's feeling more personal to me than I think we would want a compensation decision to be off of. This is not feeling
I've
very
only
good to
answered
me.
the questions that were asked of me.
No, not from you. I'm not suggesting from you. I'm suggesting the questions that are being directed there.
Okay, fine.
I have a quick question. I know that when you said that we were gonna when you guys were discussing salaries, that there was the art and then there was the science and then the arts, excuse me. When you guys are giving these numbers, is this considering both science and art? And I'm asking so that I'm making sure that I'm appropriately writing this down. Because I know that the conversation was like, it's been a lot about the numbers, and so I was like, I wanted to know if if that other thing was considered or not. And if it wasn't, that's fine, I just am asking, so I make sure I'm taking the notes right.
Yeah, I think the answer is yes, because if
Okay.
we went purely by science, we'd be giving 27%.
Okay, I just wanted to double check.
And I would agree, everything that you've been discussing is the data plus your value, the value that you're assigning to these jobs.
And just
Definitely.
one more thing about the auditor, and again, this goes back to job description and not about the person in the role now, but the next auditor might not have relationships on Wall, it's an elected position. They might not be able to do all the things that the current auditor is charged with doing, so
That's why. I
where
think
the
it's-
attorney will have to have a JD. So, I mean, I'm not trying to split hairs, but really, if we're trying to have a baseline of a science and then add art, I mean, that's a fact. The next auditor might not be able to perform these specific duties. Somebody in the office will, but it might not be the auditor.
And Megan followed Hugh Dorian, who held the position 50 years probably. I mean, these are true facts that are affecting everything we're discussing right now. I agree with that, and I think it's to the point that somebody needs to put some descriptions together and be thinking about what these roles are and how much they really play in the operations of our city. You know, the city attorney must have a license. That kind of works. It starts to, there's a standard by which that person must perform and pass certain exams, all that kind of stuff. We need to do that for the auditor. And at that point, I might be more inclined to look at these equally.
I also just want to add, in terms of recommendations for the report, that I would like to recommend that this data that we're viewing now is what the next commission starts with or has. So that way they can see how we based our decision. Not that they shouldn't have the other information, but all the information that we've received, it would have been really helpful if we would have had that, started with that from the last commission, because it gives us a baseline of understanding of how the decisions were made. So I would just like to make that recommendation for the next commission to receive
I agree.
this documentation and whatever else we could provide from the previous commissions about how they went about making the ultimate decision.
I think that's a point well taken.
Can we intentionally include this chart, right?
Yeah, so all of this information is on the website.
No, I mean in our report.
Oh, yeah, this will be
We
included there.
considered this.
Oh, yeah, this will be in the report
specific chart.
too.
Yeah.
I believe in the last report, they included their slides or the first one.
I believe they did.
Yeah,
Okay,
it'll be included.
perfect. Thank you.
Okay, just to be clear here, have we come up with a 10% figure for the city attorney? Is that right?
That's the motion.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, let's move on to, what, the mayor? And then do council
Excuse me,
members?
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, 10% plus COLA.
Yes, that's right, that's right.
All of the
Every
numbers
year gets plus COLA. What we're talking about now is the percentage in 2026 increase, if any, for these elected officials.
And again, in 2026, each of them will also receive the COLA.
Correct.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to the mayor.
So I take it you're comfortable with the 14?
I am. The request, I think what we discussed was what size differential should we have between the two roles? And so if we start with the 224 and suggest that where we would start is 10% difference, then I think that would take the mayor to, is that 250 something?
$246,816
And
is
that's-
10% more than the attorney's number.
Wait, I'm sorry, what was?
246,816, I'm taking the 224,379 for the attorney.
Oh, the 224 was based on 12%.
Oh, I'm sorry.
10% would be 220, 372.
Okay, 220 what?
372, 90 cents.
$242,409.
And that's a 14% increase for the notes.
That's at 14%, Michael?
No, it's more than 14. 14 would take him to 233.
No, the number I gave you, pardon me, the number I gave you is 10% more than the city
Oh,
attorneys.
okay.
For
Oh, okay,
discussion.
okay. Can you repeat that number again, please? I'm sorry.
242,409. Once again, that number is 10% more than the city attorney's revised number, which is a 10% increase also, and that number is 220,372. So the,
So that would be a total of 20% increase for the mayor.
No, because their salary's not the same to start with.
Well, see, the other part of this,
Right.
I'm not sure I still understand. The first column of 204,000, that's where we are today.
That's
yes,
current.
By the time we get to 2025, we're gonna be up to, what's that number?
well, we don't know, but we can
Well,
project, yeah.
based upon certain assumptions.
Yeah, applying 2.23% every year, it would be 218,684.
So why don't we start with that number? Because that's, if we're gonna make a pay increase, it's gonna be off of the 218 as opposed to the 204. The two.
Ye- yes,
Okay, so.
yes.
I would, how does that round out? Or does that put us in a worse position?
But the salary for, 2025 is, we don't know what the COLAs are going to be. These are projections, so I thought that we were going off of
That's what I thought too.
these numbers here that are in this chart.
Because those are real numbers, and we don't know what the other ones are.
Right, so, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't, that's what my assumption, I don't know
Right.
if that's what everybody intended.
Well, we
That's what
do
I
know
thought
there's gonna be more than 204,000. The mayor's gonna make more than 200.
Yes, but when we look at the chart where Greg guessed for us what the COLA would be, not guessed, I'm sorry. That sounded real. Use the science of estimation.
I can guess right now. Yeah, I try
so
never to do
sorry.
math in public.
I did not mean to be
Yeah.
disrespectful. I know.
No,
you-
not at all, not at all, no.
But that number, right, that's not what we're basing any of the other, that's not what we base the auditors off of. I'm just saying,
Right,
which
I
one do
just
you wanna?
realized that. I
Yes.
just realized
Okay.
that when we're doing this, we're basing it not on what their salaries will be.
We don't
So
know.
it may not be a 5% increase, is my point.
It is from today.
But
It is from today.
From
but
2022.
when you put those COLAs on, when we start in 2026,
that's all true, but we don't know what they're gonna be. And what we're talking about is we have a real number that we can extrapolate from, understanding
Yeah.
that in the end, in 2025, that number is not gonna be 204,683 for the mayor.
so to be clear, the 5% is whatever the salary is at the end of, okay.
Yeah,
I got that. That'll be part of the report. Okay, that helps me with this.
okay.
I'm not a numbers guy, you obviously see that.
You sound like one to me.
I think if we did the 10%, so if we take the salary of the attorney and we say we want a 10% greater, or a 10% increase to the mayor, that would take it to 242, 410, 19. And that is currently 11.84% greater than the salary that's listed on this chart. Whatever that number is, that's current.
What, the 233, you mean?
No, so 242, 410, 19
Right?
is 11.84% greater than 204, 683.
Okay,
See what I'm saying?
yes.
And so. But that would be a 10% differential from what the 10% that we're giving to the attorney is, because of the way that money
Right.
compounds over time. So like when this proposal goes before council, it will say the commission recommended an 11.84% increase in the mayor's salary. 11.84% increase based on 204,683 is $242,410.19. When we go to council in the same proposal, we're gonna say a 10% plus COLA for the attorney. 10% on $200,339 is $220,372.90. The difference between the mayor's $242,410.19 and the attorney's recommended $220,372.90 is 10%.
So
That
we
is a
created,
Yeah.
created the gap.
Yeah.
Okay, we,
That would be,
And I, not, to- I hesitate to say this because I don't want to confuse things, but we know these aren't going to be the numbers in the end.
Right, right.
Because of the
We're-
COLAs
Right,
that will
that's what Fred
transpire.
was
We're trying to
Yeah.
figure it
Okay,
out, yeah.
okay, fine.
Yes,
but that'll be consistent. Increases are going to be
yeah,
consistent
exactly.
across the board.
And I hesitate to ask this, but did those calculations take into account the 14%
I don't,
differential?
no, that's what I was trying to figure out.
Right, so
Yeah.
the way I'm understanding if the commission is considering bringing the mayor's salary up to market,
It
it would be 14%
Right.
off the top.
Right.
14 or on the top, however that would be, 14%. But then the commission also wants to ensure that there's a 10% separation between the mayor's salary and the
That's
next,
an arbitrary number.
which would be
So-
the
That's
attorney.
the art number. That's
My
not a.
opinion-
Exactly, which
is-
is an additional $9,000.
Yeah, in my opinion, to answer your question is not necessarily, because we didn't do it with the attorney, right? To bring the attorney up would be 27%, and we said, we're not gonna go all that way, we're gonna go 10%. If we go 11.84 with the mayor, which is less than 14, it still gives us that 10% differential between the mayor and the attorney's office.
So all you're trying to get is a differential.
Yeah, I was calculating what a 10% differential between the attorney's office and what the mayor is, and that would amount to an increase of 11.84%.
Okay, so I was more aligned to what Greg was saying, because, one, we know that the mayor is behind, so to me, we have to take care of the behind and create the differential.
So
Well, if you
14%
take-
would absolutely create that differential.
Yeah, if you-
It
if
would
you go
actually
with-
create a much bigger differential.
Right. If you go with the 14%, that would create a differential of more than $10,000 from the proposed
No, the
attorney's
14,
salary.
no, the 14% gets you to 233. So how is that more than 10% of the,
10% of 220? So that, what would be the difference between 220 and 233? 220 being, if we said 10% for the attorney, so that takes him to 220 roughly. And we went to we used 14% to cover the gap
Take us
at 233. What's the differential at that point? What percentage?
between 233 and 220. Let
Yeah.
me see, hang on one second.
The 242 that you had versus the 204 is an 18% increase.
yeah, that's what I thought, it was more like that.
Thank you.
Is a what, please?
The 242, we said the mayor's salary would be 242,409 as compared to the current 204,683. That's an 18% increase. But it gives you the differential you want.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, again, there's something not registering here. How did we get to 240?
Oh, well, we increased the attorney's salary to like 220, and then if there's a 10% differential
Okay.
roughly,
Yes.
then it takes it to 242.
Yeah, and then my math was incorrect as to what an increase of 204 to 242.
So the,
Instead of 11, it's actually like 18.
So
okay,
does the 14% create a differential?
18% does.
18% creates a 10% differential.
Right.
I'm not as concerned, I mean, we could, if 10% was
yeah.
the goal and we got 7 of it taken care of, I'm okay with that.
Correct.
So yes,
But-
there is a differential with just the 14%. The question is it wide enough?
And so tell me what the percentage of that differential might be.
I hate to
Compared
ask
to
the,
what
hate to ask the deputy auditor to do the math for us, but once again,
Deputy auditor is the one I trust to do that.
exactly. So the difference between the 220 and the 233, if you don't mind.
6%.
Okay, so that's 6%.
So we've increased it from 4%
If
to
you,
6%.
yeah, if you increase it just by the 14% to the 233, differential between the 220 and the 233 is 6%.
So I have a question. Will our recommendations be dollar amounts or will it be percentages?
percentages.
It will, okay, great. I like that better. But it's helpful to have the numbers
Right.
now as we're talking about it, for sure.
So the question is, what do we think of between 6 and 10? A number between 6 and 10, I guess, is that
I
where
think,
we are?
so I think you have to sell this to the public.
Mm-hmm.
So if what we sell is 14% and we were able to, as a commission, come to the 14% number based on empirical data that we analyzed and put into a chart and looked at, and that is per capita amount, right? And that's what we're hanging our hat on, then tying that to 14% instead of trying to make the 10% differential might be an easier,
Would be my.
I'm sorry, would be what?
an easier sell.
Either
or-
say- That would be my opinion, but this is
don't know.
where I'm splitting myself off and saying, hey, hey, this is gonna be your world. You know, the criticisms are coming back to you because they're not gonna bear on me later down the line. So this is the kind of question I put more emphasis from the other thinking than my thinking.
I mean, I think it at least has to be the 14%. I mean, at a minimum. After that, I guess we can talk about it, but what was that? It'll be 6% differential if we go with the 14? And so how does the commission feel about that?
I can be comfortable with that.
I mean,
Go ahead, please.
yeah, I was going to say, to all the points that are made, especially since I went hard in the paint during the auditor discussion, right? I feel, appropriate to go hard in the paint on this one. I mean, we said we were going to use the data. The data suggests 14% is where we should be here, so.
So then, how are we gonna justify going the full 14% for the mayor and auditor, but not for the attorney? That's what we decided?
Well, and I think part of that is the differential. To me, that the differential could be part of that argument.
Have we decided as a commission that we believe the mayor should receive the differential?
No, I don't believe it.
No, we haven't
I don't believe the
decided that.
differential.
Yeah, because I feel like we're
Yeah.
assuming that we've all agreed on that, and then we're basing
Well, because
that-
we just did all this math that,
I
like, we wanted to know what the differential was, and so if we didn't want to know it, like, I wish we could have got that time back.
I mean, from my perspective, but it's not gonna be my perspective. From my perspective, the differential doesn't move me at all, 0.
Okay.
The anchor moves me quite a bit, 14%. Because I don't want to fall behind. Again, we're working without job descriptions, we're working, so I really, like I said, those big law firms that we're talking about, if we're looking at the city attorney's office or an accounting firm, the managing partner may not be the highest paid person, but has all of the administrative responsibilities.
Yeah.
It might work out that way, so I for one, that was of little importance to me, but if it is important to you, then it is important to me. That's how I put it. The 14%, I'm cool.
I am as well.
Same. How do you two feel about the differential? And then the 14% second?
I mean, I'm fine with the differential. I don't know that it needs to be 10% differential. And I don't know that I'm married to a 14% increase as compared to something else, which then lessens the differential, right?
This might be a good point for me to chime in about all the talk with the differential. So I'm looking at the charter, section 15-3, commission duties. It's not too long, so I'm going to read the whole thing.
Yes.
The commission shall conduct a review of salaries for like positions in the public sector. The review shall be made for the purposes of, here's the important part, recommending salaries appropriate to the duties and responsibilities of each elective officer of the city. So,
Charter asked for something they didn't.
so I would just say that, it's almost like looking at each position
Yeah.
independently, not necessarily worrying about the differential.
Right.
So just some guidance there.
Well, and I appreciate that, you know, I think a recommendation then is, I mean, because we have multiple people come in to suggest that we should be treating the mayor as the CEO of the city and that there should be a differential. I think we have a report here where there's a request that is made for 10 to 20%. So, you know, if that's not germane to our discussion, then I think that, you know, some of this just starts to feel like noise.
Well, and I don't disagree with what you're saying, but the purpose of for the commission, it's supposed to be an independent commission, not necessarily being subject to influence from the mayor's office, city council, the city auditor, city attorney. Yes, you bring in folks from those respective agencies for data, but then it's your authority to decide what weight to give to that data.
Appreciate that.
Yeah.
My view, exactly.
Well, I think we all feel that way.
Yeah.
But from my perspective, that doesn't mean that I'm not willing to hear from anybody and everybody about this,
Absolutely.
whether it's the elected officials or
Right,
citizenry.
You know, frankly, maybe we should have had a meeting just so that every elected official could come in here and tell us.
Make their case.
Make your case, you know, we're gonna decide. But the 14%, I think, does both things. It catches them up, it increases the salary, it catches up the offices, differential. The offices, it catches up the office's salary, and also increases, it creates a greater differential than what we started with. And if incrementally is how we get there, I don't think that's a bad thing. I mean, if the next 2 or 3 commissions continue to work on this, there's going to be unfinished work. We're not going to be able to solve all of these issues. So, with greater clarity on what the positions do and things like that, the sand can shift. But
So just to be clear, what we're talking about there, when you say that, Fred, currently, there's about a 2% differential between the mayor and the attorney and the auditor.
Right.
This, using the 14% number and the other numbers we've discussed, would create a 6% differential. So it would go from 2 currently to 6%.
Right. But my decision has nothing to do with the fact just because it's the mayor's office. Mine has more to do with, I'm looking at other cities, other progressive cities, presumably, and maybe some not so progressive in terms of their growth. Those are the issues important to me. I am not moved at all by arguments by any of these categories. You know, we think we should be more. You know, I think everybody thinks they should be paid more. I don't know anybody that doesn't think.
I found that to be true. Most people will say that.
Well, I'll remind
Think
you,
we should be paid more.
Absolutely, so moved.
I'll remind you that the mayor didn't think Mayor Coleman didn't think he should be paid more.
That was public servant. That's kind of
Well,
gets
it's just,
back
you
to
said
this.
everybody thinks they need to be paid more. Mayor Coleman didn't think he needed to be paid more for 4 years.
Oh, I think he changed his mind. In 2022, he's not, I think he's changed his mind.
Greg, did you have some additional information?
I was just going to bring up to the commission that the discussion about the current, I think what sounds like is on the table of that 6% differential, historically, the differential has been higher. If you look at
But
the,
we are no longer considering differential based on advice of council.
I'm putting that out there.
Right.
So 14% is on the table right now as a motion.
Second.
Well, wait, I think we,
I agree.
let's
Okay, I agree.
let's have a vote after
We
we've
can
discussed
do
all
of
of these.
them. But I agree. Let me put that.
But we'll pencil in 14%.
Sounds good. So now we're off to the council member or council president?
Well, both of them we need to
Okay.
talk about, I think.
In the previous ones, we all went around the table who agreed with the 14%. So do we want to do that so I can kind of just make sure I have that?
He said he wanted to vote at the end.
Oh, yeah, I'm not saying for voting. I'm just saying just for purposes of that's how you have did all.
I think there is a consensus, correct me if I'm wrong, commissioners, to use 14%.
Okay.
For our discussion purposes here.
Thank you.
Okay? So I think we have to talk about the council president and council members, from my perspective. Consider them together. There are 7 council members. One is a council president. The council president does have a lot more duties than the other council members, but I just think we have to look at the two.
Yeah, I
Not
need
overlook-
comments on this one, because 40%, I get a little shaky at 40%.
So I was telling Michael earlier, so I don't have as much heartburn over the 40% because the position is so low. And so when you look at 40% compared to what we just approved for other people, I mean,
Yeah.
multiple 6 figures, I don't have as much heartburn. This position was further behind than the other ones. But again, I mean, we can figure out if there's a middle ground, but no, 40% doesn't give me a lot of
So
heartburn.
let me just make a point to that. The council president is voted by council members, not the public. Meaning, they ran for office to make $72,300. So,
Yeah,
you know,
but they
I mean, as to everybody else we spoke about, you don't run for council president. You are, that you're anointed.
Well, you do run for council president amongst your
Amongst 7
council
people,
members.
or 9
Yes.
people, whatever,
Yes.
however the case may be. So I raise that to say, well, I say that to say it's not, how does that impact 40%? I mean, that's taking him, he, she, or it quite a bit higher than the rest of the peer group.
I think that that's a fair point, and it's valid. That is, while elected to be council member, council president is not elected. But I think when we are assessing the duties of council president, they have to be available to meet with the mayor, to meet with the auditor, to meet with other, everybody in the city who is working normal hours. And then they have to be available to meet with all the council members. And not only do they have the 7 council members, but soon we will have 9 council members. It's 9 people that you have to whip, and you have to, get into order. I mean, it's a huge responsibility. And looking at, we're 40% behind what they would get if it was, based on per capita, that feels like very low.
And the other
for all the
piece,
work.
so I agree with everything Sarah said, but I guess I don't agree that it's a peer group, right? So I see a difference in the role of the council president than council members.
Is there a definition in the charter?
Yeah, there's language in the charter that specifies that the council president will assign committees, and I forget all of the other language, but there are specific responsibilities spelled out. I can find it maybe,
I might be able to
find
find
my
it.
paperwork.
And if I recall, the last time you all said that both council and council president were way behind and that you did some.
Right.
So I'm not saying that means we should do the whole, I'm just saying like, it's been behind, still behind, way more,
Good argument.
pretty far behind.
That's. that
Still at
too is-
40%
go.
after you tried to catch it up.
Now, I'm going to say something that council has said previously, that isn't germane to us, but this is a full-time position, right? Like this individual operates in a full-time position. I think that we heard that this is of the group, this is the only individual that does not have a second job.
We did hear that.
Not council.
No, council president does not have a second job, but he
He does
chooses.
not, but he chooses not to.
Yeah, that's my point.
He doesn't have another job, but the charter doesn't specify that.
Right, which is why I
Actually,
said
we
council,
had a- we
which
had
is why I
a
said
number
council
of
said not to bring it in, but I did want to acknowledge that when we're talking about this role, it is distinctly different to me than the council members.
Yeah,
And just
going
to
back
that-
Michael's comment about, the way it was, I think this is the first time that situation has arisen
Well,
by his, it's sort of like, you know, the mayor making a decision, I'm not gonna get a pay.
Exactly.
Section 10 of the charter, President of Council. At the first meeting in January following a regular municipal election, the council shall elect one of its members president. The president of council shall preside at meetings of the council, determine the agenda for such meetings, appoint the chair and members of council committees, and perform such other duties as may be imposed by the council. If the president of council dies, resigns, is removed from office, ceases to hold qualifications for the office, or the office is otherwise vacated during the term of office, the council shall elect one of its members president. So quite a bit
Not that,
more
no.
responsibility than,
I think we could beef that up, beef that up a little bit in the charter too, but,
well, you need to
because-
take that to the Charter Review Committee.
Exactly. We need to get that, look at that again and look actually what the work is. But that, I don't know. We're talking about 40 versus 13, right? Is that the space we're in?
Should we start with the council members and then talk about the president?
Well, they're all council members.
Well,
That's why I said, that, you know.
So
should-
you're just talking still about, is there a difference in the duties to warrant a different percentage increase?
A 27% difference in,
I mean, so are you against any increase or just
No,
27%?
no, if 13% for council members, and they're all council members. They all come into office as council members. That tells me we have a gap to close. Do we have specific information? And we must have specific information on council presidents.
Yeah,
it's
it's
been
been
It was in the
The
survey.
original.
Yeah.
It's in the survey.
It was in the survey, so, well, you know, really looking at the difference in dollars, at 9 cents per capita, 14 cents per capita. So the question I pose, based upon the definition read to us, is that warrant 27% increase?
I
So
don't,
I think more than the definition read to us, I think the discussion that Sarah offered and then what I offered in addition to that, to me, yes, warrants the 27. Because again, for me, the data shows how far behind we are. And so what I'm looking to do is how do we adjust where we're behind so that we don't have to keep addressing these situations. And when we're this significant amount behind, especially when we're talking, like I said before, in hundreds of thousands of dollars for others, it doesn't feel like a challenge to me to address this role in a significant way.
I can vote yes for that. I mean, you know, again, I'm calling it out. I'm not, you know, I will not be around to have to justify this, this decision, so.
well, I mean, I think regardless of what we choose, the dispatch article or whatever.
It's gonna be
Is
bad.
gonna read council approved 40%
Right,
increase for
right.
council president, right? So no matter what we do, we're gonna have
well,
to
we don't,
justify.
we don't know that council will approve that. We make a recommendation.
Right. They may
Council
not.
They can't
can
just
do
go
anything
above it.
less than
Right.
that if
That's true.
they so choose.
And, you know, I mean, frankly, it's really something for the sitting council president to have to really think about, because he's
think about.
by doing this, we've created a lot of competition for that job. We have 9 people who want that job. I mean, that makes the difference,
Maybe,
you know, I mean.
they might be making more part-time.
So are you,
And that might be the basis too, so, but I'm just saying, you know.
so Kiana, you like going with the 40 and 13% for the council members?
I agree.
I'm good with that.
Okay, I think maybe we've got numbers for everything, but let me state it, and you can correct me if I've misstated it, and then we can vote. First of all, to be clear, one more time, all of these elected officials would get a COLA in every year, including 2026, right?
That's correct.
That the mayor would get a 14% increase. That would be on top of his 2025 salary, whatever that is, right?
Correct.
Council president, we get a 40% increase. Members, council members, 13%. City attorney, 10%. And city auditor, 5%. Is that, are you in agreement on all that? Okay, so I move that we adopt that recommendation that I just stated.
Second?
Can I just repeat for the record so I can make sure I have the numbers right?
Yeah, sure.
Mayor, so all years receive COLA.
Yes?
Mayor at 14%, council president at 40%, council members at 13%, city attorney at 10%, and auditor at 5%.
Yes.
Just for the first year, for 2026.
Correct.
Initial
Yeah.
year.
Oh, yeah. I was like, huh?
Calculated based.
Not every year.
So just to be, oh, I see what you're saying. But, right, but to be clear on 2026, the mayor would get a 14% increase over his or her 2025 salary plus the COLA. Okay? So I think we've already voted on it, right?
Well,
Or
I
have we?
We
second.
have not, for the record.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You
I
Have a vote
moved.
in second.
I
Who-
second
You
it.
second it? Is there any further discussion?
I'm in favor.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that's unanimous.
Okay.
Was there a motion made regarding the COLA? I'm sorry, the CPI to use? You talked about it, but I don't, was there a motion and a?
Okay,
We're adopting the all.
I-
Which one to adopt?
yeah, I move that we use for the CPI, the all-city CPI that our consultant recommended.
Second.
Second?
I would say that, make sure you have more specificity if Mr. Beaverson or Ms. Walters needs to just kind of specify it for the record, just to make sure you're using the right one before you vote.
Well,
More detail, the better.
It's in your.
sure, no,
she's-
that's a good point, Rob. Let me find the.
Naya has it.
his report.
Naya has
If
it.
if the chair will allow me,
Yeah.
the chair is moving to adopt the CPIU, all items in the U.S. city average, all urban consumers not seasonally adjusted as the CPI that is utilized for the setting of the elected officials' compensation for the year 2022.
Okay,
26.
second?
Oh, for this commission.
I move what Naya just stated. Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So we've come up with all the numbers now. We probably should discuss the report. And I know I gave you yesterday some language that, based on what we've done here this evening, I want to revise because the numbers aren't right. But do other commissioners have points, language that you want to make sure is included in the report, in the recommendation?
Well, I strongly urge that the Charter Review Commission take a look at the criteria for the positions, the elected positions, to allow us to allow future commissions greater, better information upon which we can make distinction, to the extent that we did spend so much time talking about differentials. The only real way for us to accomplish this is by fully understanding what the roles of each of these offices are requiring.
So that speaks to job descriptions?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, so the charter specifies, so so I don't know, tell me, is it,
What's your question?
as opposed to a job, is it a job description, or is it which I would think could be adopted by city council? Or are we talking about a charter revision given that the charter doesn't give sufficient specificity.
Yeah, there's multiple ways. I mean, there could be amendments to the charter, there could be changes in HR to add job descriptions, maybe. That's way outside my expertise. There could just be generic or general job descriptions created in advance of the next commission meeting. You know, quite frankly, the next commission could ask each one of the city attorney auditor to prepare a job description and submit it to the commission for consideration.
So what would be what's the comfort level with those options? I just think it's important, that we have agreed upon job descriptions to work on.
Well, I mean, I like the idea of making the recommendation, do one of these things, update a job description, change the language, whatever, right? I don't think that we have to be as prescriptive to tell them which one, but here are some options. I think one of the things that we did talk about too, Naya, is the CPA and the auditor. So one of the things, based on that conversation that we had with respect to the auditor compensation, is there an opportunity to create some type of bump if the auditor does have a CPA, right? So if it's not going to be required, if the auditor does have a CPA, that would be akin to me to a JD, which would then suggest that that position should be paid at a higher rate.
The other thing that I wanted to note that we talked about, because we did kind of talk briefly about what the council members' duties were, because I kind of presented that information at one of the meetings. Each council member gave a different kind of like explanation of what it is that they do. Some of this, similar in nature, but they all could view their positions differently. And so that's just something to also consider, because if you do get a job description and what they actually do could always be different.
I think that's fair. I think that, for instance, we might have a tax attorney at my employer who the basics of the job is one thing and how each individual executes that job might be different. So I think it's okay to have a framework knowing that people, might color outside, the lines.
Okay.
Depending on their expertise, their training, so on and so forth.
So I think the issue we're trying to overcome with council, I'm trying to overcome with council. So last commission, the greater focus was on whether they're part-time, full-time. We sprinkled that around a little bit, even with this commission. I think if I take the historic picture view and looking at the salaries just 20 years ago, and the council that was sitting there at that time and the council sitting before, it was clearly part-time.
Mm-hmm.
Very clearly part-time. If we have elevated that, well, where did our salaries fit from that elevation and what created it? So maybe it starts with some descriptive kind of information, but historically, it doesn't appear that in the operations and administration of the government, they played a full-time role, I guess. I don't know, maybe collectively, but everybody had a job. Jobs that today would be a conflict. So it's, something happened. I don't know what it was, and maybe it does get to this question of part-time and full-time. But it's important as we set salaries. It could be argued if this is a part-time salary, it's part-time salary.
Let me propose this to you, that we give each other a day to submit to Naya any verbiage that you would like to have. And then Naya and I will work together to come up with a draft for everybody's review, and hopefully that you'll agree to it. and we'll
Yeah, I
we'll
don't have
proceed.
language for what I just expressed. I'm
Well,
just saying,
okay.
the questions, how the questions have gotten presented to the two commissions I've sat on. I'm not sure we have come yet to a conclusion and about it, number one. Number two, I think Kiana made a point in a very early meeting. You know, is this something we want to even get into? Do I want to even care about it one way or the other? But it has presented itself. And it, now twice, in 3 commissions, twice this has gotten to us, one way or another.
There was some discussion about whether you would include in your report that decisions that were made about the percentages increases were based on the information that you received and whether you feel that council positions align more with full-time as opposed to part-time. Not saying that you're making this proclamation or a
Right.
final conclusion, but that you felt that, based on the information you were presented, you felt that they fell more in line with part-time or
And
full-time.
we have some data now.
And that's something that you can present to NIA to put in the report.
And that's what I was
We do
gonna
have some
ask.
data that suggested that more than 50% of the cities that we surveyed considered council members to be full-time. So what happened between 20 years ago and today that kind of, shift that raises this question?
I also want to be clear that I know that we saw that there were several cities that considered full-time, but we didn't necessarily review whether or not those cities prohibited them from having outside employment. Or did you have that information?
That was
Was
one
that a
of the
question?
original questions.
So was that considered in the full-time, when you considered them full-time, were those cities that were on that full-time list prohibited from
I
outside
don't
employment?
remember how we
And the only reason the only
analyzed
reason
it.
I'm asking that is just because I wanted to kind of clarify that even if council was considered full-time, part-time, there's still no prohibition on outside work, which is, that's just kind of what it is. And so that's just something that I want to consider. And I also wanted to ask, are you all comfortable with me when I draft the report saying that the consideration for these salaries, at least when it comes to council, or even all of them, if that's how you feel, that these are full-time positions, and that's when we set the salaries, that was the consideration in our mind, that these jobs, we believed were full-time, and we being you all.
I don't want to go there.
And the reason why I'm saying
I
it's
don't
not,
wanna go there.
the reason why I'm asking that is because in the previous commissions, I think they said that when they were considering the salaries, you're not making a determination of them being part-time or full-time, but when you were thinking, you were kind of categorizing it as a full-time job. That's how you got to your recommendations without saying that. And so I'm just asking,
That was in the report.
yeah.
My opinion would be to put in, specifically in the council president section, the thing that I said tonight of how, the amount of work and how he or she or, whoever they need to be available during the day and in the evenings, that they need to work with, increasing from 7 to 9 council members, and that was the consideration, and that availability to do and perform those tasks and perform them well may lend itself to committing to that full-time. I would be comfortable with putting that in the report. With council members, I don't know that I can say that the amount that I specifically chose was because in my head, I want it to be full-time.
Okay.
I don't know that I would have chosen that number if in my head we were committing to a full-time position.
Okay, and that's just why I wanted clarity around if that's going to be touched at all, or if it's going to be left to, like, we're not going to say what that's the decision.
I think in the council section, speaking for myself again, in the council section, I would be okay with saying we would like to eventually see our council members become full-time. And whether that's, now or in the future, that's the direction that, we as the public commission, right, would like to see our council members move. And so the salary increases are hoping that we can get in the right direction.
Well, and yeah, you just want to be cautious in the language that you use, and I can certainly work with NIA to make sure that it's appropriate.
Yeah.
But you may want to use language to indicate that you want to see them be classified as full-time, or some consideration be given to classifying them as either part-time or full-time, as, again, just want to stay away from any kind of final determination, for
Yeah,
sure.
I
And I would
think
suggest
that
that we discussed it, because I don't know that I'm in the same place on that topic that Sarah is.
Yeah, nor am I.
You know, I mean, this gets back to the responsibilities, as I was listening to the responsibilities of the president of the city council, I think we made some decisions here that he or she who is elected president of city council is full-time, but no one else is. I mean, did we intend that?
Say it one more time, Fred.
So, I mean, and this is data-driven, this is not being criticism, this is kind of a question. We kind of established in our discussion about where we ended up with the president of city council, that person's job and responsibilities were akin to full-time. And so, what,
I don't know if in my head I equivocate, is that even a word? Equivocate, full-time and the amount of duties. So I don't know if I drew that exactly.
Well, and that's why I was saying, like, I feel like there's some massaging, because, so what Fred is saying is accurate for me. That is how I thought about the president of council, but that's not how I thought about the members. But Sarah has a different perspective, so I don't know, like, if we're going to be able to land on specifics other than this is part of our discussion.
Yeah.
and here's the real point. So when the council meets to elect the president of city council, they have to have honest discussion about who's going to sacrifice what to do this. And if you're not willing to sacrifice to do this, we can't elect you president. I mean, we made the salary such that, you know, we're asking you to commit. And we understand it might make it more difficult for you, a bigger challenge.
But I don't think that's what we're saying. I don't feel like that's what I'm saying.
Well, no,
in this
that's not
instance,
what we're
Fred.
saying.
Okay,
I'm
okay.
talking about council at some point has to meet and decide amongst themselves. We're not going to make that decision. We're just saying this is what the pay will be. But I think amongst them, they have to they should want some assurance that the person is committed to the time. Let's not call it full-time or part-time, but whatever the time is, that is committed to that time,
I think that's.
because that's why there's this differential. You know.
Just like we made a recommendation about you could do one of these 4, 10
Right,
things to
right,
determine what the job
right.
duties are, could you also say, we recommend that for the next commission, there's some survey taken of the public, do they want their do they see them as full-time, do they see them as part-time, do they want them at full-time?
Yes.
Something for
Right.
further study, can we just make a recommendation
And I think we
like
also
that?
need to point out that this really is, isn't it, the realm of the Charter Review Committee,
Yes.
rather
Ultimately.
than ours?
Yes, I think ultimately.
I mean, our realm is what we just
Yeah,
agreed
we
to.
did what we thought, but, you know, it's kind of, we had some challenges to get to where we got.
I think it's fine for us to recommend that the Charter Review Committee consider these things. Put it on there.
Yeah.
I just want to clarify, because I think I heard y'all say the same thing, but then I said it was different. So you, Commissioner Ingles and Commissioner Williams, both agree that for a council president, you see them kind of as maybe more akin to full-time, but you differentiate on opinion as it comes to council members.
So I feel like that's what I said, but I thought you said that you didn't want to say, you didn't factor full-time into your thought process.
I did not factor full-time, part-time, I factored the amount of duties that.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure I got that right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm massaging words. Right now.
So duties for you.
Like a good attorney.
So in terms of process, I'm sorry,
That's
please,
what
Keisha, go
I'm sorry,
ahead.
that's what I was gonna ask about process,
Go ahead.
but maybe you'll address it, so.
Well, we've decided on what the numbers are. What we're talking about is the copy, the language
Yeah.
in it, right? So are there other things that you haven't told Naya that you would like to have stated in the report?
I've sent her some things that I wanted to have stated, but I know that and I don't know the timing of presenting this to council, so if it can't happen, I understand. But if we could give her a chance to draft everything, make corrections, and then we could look at it and then give it to you all for the final go-around, that would be helpful for me, because it might spark other things that I might want to add.
So I was gonna get to that at the end. So in an ideal process, what will happen is I've taken a lot of notes this evening, and so I will kind of try to put together the thoughts that I kind of got from the commission based on the discussion, and then I will create a copy of the draft report and send it to you all to review. And then we would have to come together one additional time, very briefly, for you all to basically adopt the report and put your wet John Hancock on it.
The last proceeding. What I recall was.
Yeah, I never came back.
Yeah, I mean, it was left
So,
to
we
the
didn't-
chair and staff to work through this language.
Well, when I
I think we
talked,
did it all via email.
when I talked to the city attorney, he's suggested that you all, if there were changes to the report, like if there was something, major changes to the report based on what I sent, that there should be a vote to adopt the report.
Yeah, so the problem is that you're doing two things. You've made motions and adopted numbers tonight, but the language that's in the report should be reflective of what the five of you agreed to. And so if NIA creates this report and all five of you say, this looks great, we don't need to make any adjustments or modifications, there needs to be some formal adoption of the report. And that's usually done through a
Must have
vote.
been delegated to the chair, because.
I thought we did it via email. I
What's
feel
that?
like I still have an email where
Oh,
we did it
we
via
did?
email.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
But you
Well,
seem to
so-
be suggesting that
I'm,
we're out of order.
I'm always, I don't know who the attorney was. Well, actually, I think I do know who the attorney was, and I'm not about to disparage a colleague of mine. I've been at this for 29 years, and I always err on the side of caution. It's always better to just do
Well, there was a question, can we just do this in an email?
So I would say, don't do it in an
emails.
email, but I got one better for you. Up and through June 29th, you can have a virtual meeting.
Yeah.
So if you want to have a virtual meeting, as long as there's public notice of the virtual meeting, just for a 15-minute purpose of it, making a motion to adopt the report in its current form,
Okay on that?
Yep, that's fine.
then you can do it that way. And that,
Okay, let's do it that
Also,
way.
I will also note that last time you all signed this report, and I don't know, I was like, I don't know how this part came about, so you guys are comfortable sending me your signatures
I
to
can
put on here?
confirm that is my electronic signature. I can confirm that.
Yeah, that was the only point, I was like, how do I get the signatures if I don't
You-
actually?
you could either
I'm happy to do the virtual meeting.
do that, or have them each come down to the office and sign it when it's convenient,
doing that.
when it's
Do you?
convenient.
I
Do you know if those are
requested an
electronic
signature, yes.
It was an electronic signature.
That's, if they are comfortable sending, if you all are comfortable sending your electronic signatures, I promise I will not do anything with them other than put them in this report. That is fine with me. I'm happy to do the virtual meetings. I was gonna offer that as an option. But then I thought about the signature, so I was like, well, how do I get those?
And I would actually like to have them too, if that's okay. The last two commissions, keeping those relationships, those good relationships that we have with other cities. I have a memo from the commission with each of your signatures saying, thank you very
Do
much, we
electronically.
appreciate the
I mean,
time.
I've signed away my life electronically. The report wasn't here.
Okay, so just to be clear here, Naya's going to put together a draft. We're going to review it, and then we're going to schedule a virtual meeting with public notice, and we'll make revisions or adopt it as is, right?
When is a good time?
Well, we have.
When's good
we have-
for
we have-
you?
Yeah, you're gonna do the drafting. We have dates going into May.
Well, yeah, that wasn't intentional, but I was just trying to keep the calendar dates. But,
Would you be able to draft the report in a week, and then we have a week to work through our edits, and then that puts us out 2 weeks, so we schedule our public meeting in 2 weeks? And then,
that should be fun.
Is that fine?
It would be reviewed, before you just disseminate it, I'm sure the chair will look at it, and legal counsel will look at it. I mean, you just made this a very minor, it's not minor, it's major because it was legal, but you made a point that, maybe we're talking about classification and that, is so that the terminology and the stuff we're looking at, I think it needs to clear through both the chair and
Yeah.
council before we take a shot at it.
Yeah, I was thinking of it as just kind of reviewing it with staff and then sending it to you all as a collective. And then you all reviewing it, the chair getting it at the same time as the rest of the commissioners. And then Obviously, before it goes any type of public, you all will sign off on it, but just kind of reviewing it with with the staff, so with Greg to make sure I have his information, with Robert to make sure that everything is okay from that end, and then I would send it to you all, and then you all would give your feedback, and then if there were any changes, I would make those changes.
Did we propose the legislation?
So-
Or was that drafted by something
That's
separate?
done separately.
Okay.
So do you need us to set the date for our public review via Zoom or whatever it is?
Yes, because that's a public meeting, so we can shoot for, let's see, today's 13th, the 21st. Or-
Be out of town, but I guess I don't necessarily need to be here for the
I will-
meeting, as long as I've done the review.
I will also be.
I'm out the week of
We
the
can,
18th.
we don't, it doesn't have to be the 21st, that's just 2 weeks from now on a
What
Wednesday.
works for you?
It could also be the 28th, I guess that would be, that's 3 weeks from now.
Yeah, because I thought that there was a date that we were shooting for.
Well, we said 2 weeks, so like, I'll get.
No,
Oh,
For June 29th,
the-
is that it?
Or
For the
have we
what?
done
the expiration of the.
oh, that's today.
That's,
So that's why,
Oh,
that's why, that's, since the
Okay,
recommendation,
okay,
the report
okay,
doesn't have to
okay,
be
okay.
actual recommendations.
Naya, when you send an email, could you just tell us if you want us to track changes or send a separate document? What's the best way for you to organize it? You don't have to
Yeah.
answer that now, but when you send us the report, so I give it to you in a way that you can work.
I might put it in a Google Doc so that y'all can make changes and everybody can see the changes happening
What does that mean?
simultaneously. That's what.
Yeah, us old guys
Okay.
are not
Did we
very-
land on a date?
Yeah, our meeting time, would the 28th, what time works for the, the WebEx?
I don't think we should do
I mean, it doesn't matter. It's whatever works for you all. It's likely only going to be no more than 20 minutes.
say
Commissioners,
that, it's gonna be no.
It's
Yeah.
9:00 a.m.
9 o'clock, that works for me.
9 o'clock
So
on the
Keisha and Fred,
28th?
we're looking at the 28th at 9 a.m.
I think I have a procedure on the 28th.
So how much will you, how much time do you think it'll take you before you give us a draft?
Out.
9
What's
a.m.
Nope.
I won't be available.
What time on that
Not
date
the
works?
27th. That's what
I
I meant.
won't be available
27th.
until noon.
Okay, so noon on the 28th?
27th.
Okay.
7th?
Oh, the 28th, hold it. I'm looking at the 28th.
I miscounted the days.
Okay.
Yeah, I have a board meeting.
I'm open on the 27th because you sent us
The
calendar invites for that
27th
time.
is limit of achievement.
At 10
Just,
a.m.?
I don't know. But I just putting it out there because it's
I think it's at noon.
It's at noon.
Isn't it? I don't know. Actually, don't give me the line.
You already have that on the calendar for that day at 10.
Not for me, because I declined all of them after today. Yes.
So did I hear?
But 10 a.m., is
did
that
I
what we're
hear-
looking
No,
at?
I think we need to go a little later. I'm not going to be finished in my board meeting.
On the
Okay,
27th?
On the, the 27th.
yes.
Okay.
The 27th at 10 o'clock we're talking about,
Yes.
right?
Yes, yes.
Is that
That's
okay?
good,
That
because
works,
it-
Roger.
Okay, the 27th at 10 o'clock.
And that's on our calendar.
I'm just gonna call it Naya.
Yeah.
It's not on everybody's calendar.
Would you like me to replace it on your calendar, or are you going to keep it deleted?
Naya,
If you
when,
send me one, I won't delete
Well,
it.
yeah, I will send you one now that
Okay.
I shouldn't delete the calendar, because I had them strung.
Naya, when do you think you'll have the draft for us?
I'll probably have it sometime next week.
Next week? Okay. Is there anything more to come before this commission? I have a motion.
Yes, thank you so much, staff.
For the
Thank
record,
you.
Michael, I
Thank
think
you.
you owe you, is a debt of gratitude.
Well,
did
you
it.
all do.
You
You
got
all
it
do.
through. You did excellent work. It's, you took your own time to put together charts and things like that.
Yes.
Thank you, thank you.
Citizens of Columbus need to understand and appreciate the work you've done today.
Thank you, Fred. Is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you.
Aye.
Aye.